Demolition.
Was fun.
Yes.
That part was.
You're gonna need to hold this up here so we can see it.
I had a question stopping the other sheet.
So, Tyler was super anxious to get started with those bus seats.
Yeah, I wanted to get started on the drive home. That wouldn't have been possible.
That would not have been possible because apparently the nuts and bolts go through to the
You should have done it
bottom
on the drive home.
of the
Because you have
bus.
to be underneath the bus to get the other end of the.
Because
of
who
the
knew?
bolt.
I had
All the
no
seats
idea.
are bolted down with these but
Okay, well those are the thick ones because that one went through the ribbing, but
oh, this one went through ribbing.
All the way through to the bottom of the bus. So we had one kid under the bus and one kid in the bus, unscrewing all of the nuts and bolts.
Tyler became intimately familiar with the bottom of the bus.
Yes.
Mm.
And took what, 2 days, I think.
It took 2 sessions.
Two
And
sessions.
the help of his awesome friend Nathan. Shout out to Nathan for the help that he's given us too. He helped remove a bunch of the seats, right? You guys had a very efficient process.
Oh yeah, we did.
So, and they're bulky. And in my imagination, they would have 4 legs. But turns out they don't have 4 legs.
Don't.
They are
Things
as
you
built
never
as
noticed about a bus.
inexpensively as possible. And 2 legs rest in the aisle, and the outer edge just bolts to this chair rail, which runs the length of the bus, which is really just a crimp in the framing metal.
Where is it?
So it's just it's the super simplest thing you could think of, and it saved them money, but it makes the seats pretty worthless.
Yeah.
Unless it's in a bus. I asked both local school systems, Poway and San Diego, if they wanted any part of the salvage of the bus seats because the fake leather was intact, and
Yeah, there were some
They were
ones that were in
decent
decent shape.
none of them were interested though.
We
So
tried really hard to recycle all of that.
Which is really weird because I know that our school district's buses are terrible. Their seats are terrible.
but they did not.
Maybe they weren't
They did
compatible.
not. For whatever reason, they did not accept our donation. So what we have resorted to, well, we had the seats in here for a long time and started doing the rubber rip out while the seats were in here, and we just pushed them all to one side and then pushed them to the other side because we didn't have anywhere to put them. It's not like we're going to take them to the dump and just dump them. So what we ended up doing with the seats was it's a metal frame with foam and fake leather covering, plastic. We're stripping the foam and the naga hide, the fake leather, off of it. Pleather, that's what they call it.
Yes.
The foam and the pleather off of the steel frames. And thank you, military, there's metal recycling bins all over Miramar. And they encourage you to recycle your metal there. So that's where we're recycling the seats. We're practicing our welding skills on some of the seats, and we turned one of the no-legged chairs into a 2-legged chair or 4-legged chair.
Usable chair.
A usable chair, which was weird because then it's designed to be bolted to this rail, so it was not built to be stable.
Oh, you can't lean back
So
on
you
it.
couldn't lean back on it, but Tyler has practiced his skills and put some skids on the back. So
Oh my goodness.
we are practicing our skills and using that metal.
The rubber was fun.
The rubber was fun.
Yeah, that was rough.
So we don't even have sheets of that stuff left.
No, we don't. Why would we want any?
So
Jen did all of the rubber. I think you did all the rubber.
well, me and the 2 little neighbor boys came by to help. They were like 3 and 5, and they were cute because they were like, "Can we help?" And I'm like, so I let them.
That was
use
a
the
good
hammer
time for
a
them to
little bit.
help. Yeah. 'cause
Yeah, that was
Because-
relatively
Yeah.
safe.
The glue holding this, they glued this whole rubber sheets down on all the metal, and it would not just rip up. And the rubber was old enough that it was tearing.
Yeah.
So if you tried to pull it up in strips, mostly it would just tear.
Yeah.
So with
They
a hammer
had an
and
awesome
chisel,
time. They thought it was
They
the
loved
greatest
it.
thing.
it was
That
good
was
for
great.
kids.
Yes.
And they got dirty, and
Yes.
their mom thought it was cool because
Yeah.
they're learning and stuff.
Yep.
So
And they were actually watching another one do it as well.
Yeah.
Not going to link it because they didn't.
They
like
had
it,
just
but-
watched some videos on YouTube about a bus conversion, and then they saw a bus in their neighborhood
yes.
and thought, what?
Which is funny because, I'm sure there's haters around here because our
We got an HOA complaint.
homeowners association
did.
has said,
You know.
you can't park that bus there overnight. And we pointed them to the San Diego law that says you can
You
with a
can.
permit, and we
Yeah.
permit it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's some haters, but
Sorry.
for the most part, people walk by and they're interested in
Nobody's
this.
verbalized their hate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they only
Everybody's
verbalize
verbalized
their joy.
their support, yes.
And
which
they're
has
like, hey,
been-
that's cool, and hey, that's
Yeah.
really neat. Hey, how far did you get today? So it's
Yeah,
been kind of
We've had
cool.
people offer help and offer tools
Yeah.
and
One of our neighbors gave us some 2x3s
Yeah,
from
yeah.
a site that
Yeah.
you rejects.
We'll talk about that more when we get to subfloor
Okay, so we're still talking about
demolition.
demolition and taking
Stick to the slides.
stick to the
it's
slides.
hard to stick to the slides though. You're gonna have to do some
So-
serious cutting here.
Oh yeah.
So
Uh,
the entire rubber sheeting had to come because the entire floor is coated in rubber and is all coated with 2020 glue, which baked in this heat for 20 years,
yeah.
and it did not like to come up. And we broke a hammer. I think there's some.
We
of
did
that
break
in
a
there.
hammer. Yes.
That wasn't until we did the
That later
roof.
on, not on
Yeah.
the floor.
Oh, that was the roof.
Yeah.
But we increased our chisel collection. My favorite one though was one from my grandfather that my dad had as in shed. It's just this sheet. It's this
Just
solid
a
steel.
chisel.
Yeah, but it kicked behind taking the
Cool.
stuff up. So it was a long and arduous task.
Yes.
That took several sessions.
Yeah.
And
We
a
did it
lot of
basically by
sweat.
quarters.
And a lot of back pain.
Yeah, it was disgusting.
that one looked
And dirty.
rough. That
And,
looked rough.
and think about how many kids have vomited on that floor over the
Spilled
years.
soda,
Oh, the
spilled
amount.
stuff.
Gum and candy and
Yes, there was
Most of the gum and candy was gooked up on the.
on the edges.
you know, kids drooled and
Touched it.
spit.
Oh, I'm
and-
sure there was lots of.
So disgusting.
The
job.
floor was pretty gross. It was pretty gross.
I mean, we still have some up
We
here.
do still have a little bit left to do, but
But our goal was to tear it down to the metal.
yeah.
And that's what we did.
Okay.
Pulling the rubber up sucked, and
Yeah.
that we thought that was going to be the worst of the demolition.
That's
but
what we did. We actually, yeah.
turns
Each
out,
part we keep thinking is the worst.
funny thing, it was not the worst.
It was not the worst.
Turns out well, we were looking at the roofing, and we wanted to pull all the sheet metal off so we could.
Well, I think you originally thought we'd leave it up there.
Well,
We would
that's
just
kind of
cover
the
over it,
lazy
but
way.
We decided to do it the right way.
I was talked into.
Stop it all.
It didn't take a lot of talking, but I was convinced finally that we should take all this stuff out, which we did.
Yep.
It looked like half of it was in with Phillips head screws, which would have been nice. It would have been great if the whole thing was screwed in, but
No.
screws are a little more expensive than rivets.
So
So,
less efficient.
what?
Aren't rivets faster to put into?
Yeah. So, anyway, most of the bus is held together with rivets.
How many rivets, Ty? I think you
Oh,
guys did the
gosh,
math.
Well, we figured out there's like 50 in each rib, and there's
Yeah,
It was-
there's how many ribs? It was like
almost 1,000 rivets,
Like
maybe.
45, yeah, 45 to 50.
too many.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
And some rivets are tougher than others. Some of them do not have a core, and some of them have a core.
You went through several strategies for how to get the rivets
Yes,
out.
we considered specialty tools. So I was like, man, I'm going to spend $100 on this tool that will take out rivets because it was such a pain in the tuchus.
I think you guys started by trying to drill them out.
Yes, we used a normal drill for a little bit, and that took out the soft non-cored ones fairly decently.
Still wasn't pleasant.
Wasn't pleasant, but well, we were just using a regular drill bit. Then we found out that you should really be using a titanium carbide drill bit. So we bought a couple of those, spent a little more, and those worked better.
Did work better.
But the cord rivets were still majorly resistant to being removed. Because it turns out the core is like a steel nail of some sort of steel core. So you can't really drill it because the core makes the drill head bobble around and you just can't get it to start drilling. So we finally figured out you could punch the cores out. So we used my metal punches and punched all the cores out, which some were easier than others to punch out, some were resistant.
I think that was the win, though, right? Was
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, once we figured out you could punch the cores out, you could get them out, and then you could drill them out. So
And
Tyler and Nathan.
Another shout out to Nathan. I think he hates rivets now, but
Yes,
does.
that's his-
we appreciated his help.
yes. So almost 1,000 rivets removed, all the sheet metal removed, and there's some video of that, I think, in another montage. But we did one of the things so now everything was out, except there was this big hose running down the port side of the bus, all the way to the back.
So in normal human terms, that's left.
Well, it would be on the left side, but if you don't know what port side is, you can go look it up. We're going to talk nautical lingo here on this channel. Tyler will put little arrows.
Fix it in post.
If you don't know what an overhead or a deck or a port or a starboard are, then Tyler will help you with visual aids.
Yep.
But you know. I know you know. Everyone knows deep down.
No.
So anyway, on the port side of the bus, there were some 1.5-inch hoses, a pair of 1.5-inch hoses running back to this heater, and we saw several methods of getting rid of this thing.
Yep.
Some people just kind of cut the hose towards the back and looped it around. We traced the hose out to the front of the bus and found that it is all a series system that there's valves on the engine that energize the radiator fluid running through this heater system. And it runs first through one side of the driver's side and then through another side of the driver's side and then to the back and then to the front and then a return to the engine. So it's this big loop. So what we decided to do was just take out that loop. So what we've done is we've left the two inside heaters in the front, and we, instead of running a 30-foot hose to the back and then a 30-foot return hose to the front, we're running a 1-foot hose to cut that out of the system. Okay, bulkhead sheet metal for you landlubbers, that's a wall.
Wow.
But the bulkhead sheet metal was the same as the overhead, but there's more steel
rivets.
cord rivets in the bulkheads, and I don't know why. But
so the rivets in the walls were easier to get out than the rivets?
They were actually just as big of a pain.
Oh, okay.
Turns out the emergency exits clamped over the sheet metal, so we had to figure out how windows worked, which was great because we figured out, they pop out. Yes. So actually windows are pretty modular and removable, so that we'll figure in our plans later on for painting.
Yes.
Yes.
And replacing, because we've got a couple with some cracks in it.
Yeah. So we removed we had to remove the emergency exits, and while we were at it, we disabled all the alarms that beep at the driver. So the back is not alarmed anymore. So if my 15-year-old decides to sneak out the back, I guess we won't get an alarm. So you have to crawl over us in bed, so.
It only beeps when the engine's trying to turn on.
Or while the engine is on,
Yeah.
period. Like anytime the ignition's on, it beeps. Which was annoying because while we were working, we would leave one cracked and beep, beep, beep.
Yeah.
So those are gone. We were a little concerned about the alarm because I was concerned if you took the push button out of the system that would make the alarm go on all the time. Mm-hmm. But it turns out, how does that work logically? If you take the alarm button out, it just doesn't do anything. So we were worried about the emergency alarm. I was worried about.
Yes.
But it turns out it must be in the system. It has to interact. If you take it out, it defaults to off. So opening the switch must complete a connection. So it must be on is off, or compressed is off, and then opened is on. We'll short circuit we'll complete the circuit. So by removing it from the system, easy day. Now don't let your
disclaimer, that was just for our bus.
For our bus.
If that applies to any other one.
And if a school child decides to go disable a bus system, don't blame me. Sorry.
Okay, well they have to dig through the dashboard to get to that.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
So okay. Anyway, don't disable your school systems, your school bus's system. It's there for your safety.
So we have a special guest appearance.
Part of the idea on this bus was for a peak trip.
Come right around us.
Because Foxtrot, the star of her own internet channel, which is called an Instagram channel
Hi,
called
puppy.
Mrs. Pigglesworth, which is another of her nicknames, Another nickname is Peeg because she snorts like a pig. But she's here for her bus. This is her bus. This is Peeg's bus.
She can think that.
So there she is.
And Kyle taught her yesterday that this is her box, and now she loves it and sleeps in it in the house.
Even if it's too small.
Even if she doesn't quite fit, but apparently she gets to go
She
on.
fits sitting.
So follow
Teacher.
Foxtrot on Mrs. Pigglesworth on Instagram.
She's quite the queen of her house. And
Heather,
she's
shut the door.
and she's the smallest of the 3 dogs.
Yeah, so that was about it.
Good girl. I hope you don't.
I think that brings us to the end of demolition, and we'll talk about the rest soon.